That's it. I mean, if you've got any questions, then.
Why not two?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Criterion Corner, where we talk about films in the Criterion Collection. And today, I figure we take a break from the usual political-based previous episodes, like The Great Dictator talking about anti-fascism, and Godzilla talking about nuclear proliferation. So now, we're going to talk about Christopher Nolan. Seems like a good shakeup. Christopher Nolan is a filmmaker that, even if you haven't watched his films, you know of the guy's reputation. He's a person that is known for out-of-the-box ideas when it comes to his grand filmmaking style. And he's also known for, well, the Dark Knight trilogy, which has since become one of comic book movies' favorite trilogies of all time. But where did he start? A lot of people will say that one of his first movies was Memento, and you'd be right. Memento was a film that really got him put onto the map in terms of, out-of-the-box filmmaking. That film had an element of twisting of a plot structure, where parts of the film would be forwards and parts of the films would be backwards, and that film caused a lot of people to really think about story structure and how it's made. But what if I were to tell you that this movie right here, Following, is his first movie he ever made, with no studio backing whatsoever? Let's talk about it. In terms of filmmaking, indie filmmaking especially, you don't necessarily rely on big studio budgets, right? Christopher Nolan worked his way up through the years with various films like Following, Memento, Insomnia, but after that point, he was able to make bigger and much more complicated films in terms of how the films are told. And regardless of whether or not you like Christopher Nolan's films, you can understand how big of an impact Christopher Nolan has had on popular culture, in terms of a lot of his big budget films becoming, well, big successes. Except for Tenet, of course. And when you look back at a film like Following is a film that, to me, encapsulates everything that an independent filmmaker dreams of making. A film that is so scrapped together, is shot so, methodically and edited methodically, that it encapsulates a lot of the earlier ideas that Christopher Nolan really had. From its non-linear structure in terms of its story progression, the fact that it follows 3 separate storylines that interconnect at different points, allowing the viewer to really dissect and construct the story in their minds of how the story goes in a linear fashion. In fact, in this movie alone, there is actually a linear cut of the film in the bonus features. I don't know why you would want to do that, but when talking about the film, Christopher Nolan said that this was a movie that he made on the weekends with his friends. It was a movie that was purely about just making it. And I agree with that. A lot of the techniques that was used in this movie, he wanted to use a gun in various places, but he didn't have the money to make a prop gun. So he used hammers instead, which I think is a pretty cool substitution and really does shake up a lot of the usual, stories that I see of this type, where, they use a gun in certain parts, but, they don't have the money for it, so they just use a hammer. The whole essence of this movie is just the creative thinking that comes from the limitations that they have. They had 2 separate cameras, but they weren't necessarily the best cameras, so they had to use natural lighting, because they also didn't have the money for, set lighting like I have here. And a lot of the film just looks natural in black and white. Whenever you look at this film, there's parts of this film that use natural lighting that make the black and white look so crisp. And it's also thanks to partially the restoration process that Criterion over here did on the film. I thought it was really cool. So what exactly is this film about? Well, it's basically about this guy who is a writer, and one day he starts following other people. Just trying to get a sense of who they are. I mean, not necessarily choosing which people, he just randomly chooses people and follows them. And these people that he follows in the film end up converging in various different points in a very complicated story that mixes a lot of intrigue and mystery into it all. Who are these people? How are they connected? And we end up being the voyeurs that the main character refuses to call himself. Now, one thing I will say, however, is that even though I have watched all the later Christopher Nolan films and think that this film is not as good as those films, I will say that if I had been alive when this film was in, like, film festivals around the world and I had watched it for the first time, I would have been blown away by some of the later revelations that this film places out there. There's actually a really cool, like, ending that was like, oh my god, what the hell? Like, that's that's kind of intriguing. And there's also things in this film that are later reused in later films in his own filmography. The character Mr. Cobb, which is which was later reused as the name of Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Inception, which I thought was kind of cool that later in life he just reused that character. The fact that he had a non-linear story in terms of his storytelling is kind of what he's known for. From things like Inception with the various different levels of story and how time works in that, to Dunkirk with the 3 storylines that interconnect at different points because some points are like 2 hours, 1 week, 1 day, all this other stuff, like they all converge in that sense. Interstellar with its time dilation and how characters change over time, and how, like, people break through time to, like, go into the past to tell people things. It was a whole thing. So basically, a lot of what we can understand about Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, we can find in his original film. Christopher Nolan, no matter if you hate him or not, he's always interested in raising the level of entertainment and thoughtfulness put into his own creative works. And if this film had not been made, I don't know if we'll ever have films like Interstellar or Inception or Memento, the Dark Knight trilogy, Tenet. No matter what your thoughts are on Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, you can still appreciate him as a filmmaker that wants to try to do something new and unique in a world that has become much more homogenized over the years. And it's all thanks to a little film called Following. That's all I gotta say. I don't really have much in terms of analytical details that I could really talk about with the film. I don't really have anything much about the production other than the fact that it was shot on the weekends and it was, like, scrapped together and they had to use natural lighting. I couldn't find a lot of information about this film. So, yeah, that's our Criterion review for the month. And hopefully, we'll have a little bit more color in the next episode. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.